Welcome to Tactical Pontoon, the Trigger Jedi. And today, on this video, this is going to be part of kind of a troubleshooting / getting to know your Glock system. Part of one of those videos. And today, with this, let me move that out of the way. It's got a bit of a bright. There we go. Okay. We are going to be looking at the slide. We're going to be looking at a couple different things about a Glock slide, how it interacts with the trigger system, maybe some troubleshooting things that maybe you didn't know. Okay, so let's start it out. This is a Generation 3 Glock slide. This is my tried and true trusty test slide that's got different parts milled out of it so that you can see how things function. Okay, to start out, let's look at this right here. Do you see this little hump there, the machined hump? Do you know what that is for? A lot of people actually do not, which is why we're doing this video. This is a cam. This surface is a cammed surface. This is very vital to the operation of your trigger system. What I have here is a connector. See this arm right here on the connector? That is what you might consider the disconnector arm. There's a technical term for it, but for intents and purposes, we will call this the disconnector arm of the connector. Okay, so what does this have to do with this cam? Well, this arm actually, let's see if I can move it out of the way. This little tab rides on this cam. Okay, so when the slide cycles, it pushes that arm backwards, which then allows the trigger bar to disconnect from the system to slide past the connector. Now that trigger bar rides on this ledge right here. When that trigger bar pushes rearwards, the ledge pushes the trigger bar downwards, which drops the cruciform, which allows the striker to go forward, activating the system. The slide slides rearwards, pushes on that cam, pushes on this arm, which then disconnects it from the system. That's why it's semi-automatic. And that is what that cam is for. Now, for troubleshooting purposes, when you have a new slide or a freshly Cerakoted slide, let's say you are doing your function checks and your slide does not go back fully into battery. Now, maybe you're riding at home or you're trying to be gentle with it. Let that thing slide back into battery, pull it back, slingshot it forward. That's the way it's supposed to operate. But you're trying to be careful. I get that. But if it's not going fully into battery with a fresh, a new trigger system, a freshly Cerakoted slide, something like that, it could be that this area right here needs broke in, or it's got a little extra Cerakote in it. That's what happens when it's freshly Cerakoted. Or what you can do is you can adjust the tension of your connector. Let's move this trigger bar out of the way, and we can take a look and see that, that there is, you can see me pushing my pin punch in between the connector and the trigger block housing. There's tension. This connector is a spring, and it pushes outwards, pushes against this cam. If there is too much tension on this connector pushing against this cam, it may not go back into battery. Now, simple break-in, you can squirt yourself with just a little bit of oil, or even better, some badger snot, available on the website. In this area, cycle it a few times, it should wear in. If there's just quite a bit of tension in there, you may go in there and just slightly bend that connector inwards. Not too much. If you bend that connector in too much, this trigger bar can actually just slide right past the operating ledge and you have a dead trigger. So there's a balance to all of it. It's part of the tuning process, especially when you're building guns, when you're building your perfect build. Think about that when you're tuning. So cycle it, let it do that thing, but that is what that cam is for. Now, what you can do for troubleshooting purposes and tuning purposes is you can take a look and see if there are marks in your fresh Cerakote, in your fresh slide of that arm wearing into that cam. Now, a little bit of wear is normal, but if it is truly digging into there, that should give you an idea as to what is happening. Okay? So for troubleshooting purposes, take a look at this area. If you're running into a slide that is hard to cycle, if you're running into an issue where it's not going back into battery, this is one place to look. So this cam, very important. Wear in this area, it does happen, but if there's a lot of wear, it's something you should look into for troubleshooting purposes. Okay, the next thing that we are going to look at is this guy right here. That is the trigger safety plunger, or striker safety plunger. You know, it stops the striker from going forward. If that plunger is not activated, that striker is not going all the way forward. Now, if you activate that plunger downwards, you can see that striker goes all the way forward. And to verify that your striker is going all the way forward, now this barrel does not come all the way out because the cap is on there, and I basically glued it in place so that it didn't come off when I was cycling. But you can see the tip of the striker is sticking out of the breech face. Okay? And we can actually take a look, because of this slide design, to take a look at the inside. Here's our striker back there. It is rearwards. Let's see if we can get a good view of that. Then if we activate that plunger, let's see if I can get my hand out of the way. Pull that backwards. Okay, it is past where it needs to be. It is blocked, and then when we push that plunger in, you can see the striker went forward, and now the striker is blocked. Okay, probably not the best view of it, but it is what it is. But okay, let's talk about this in the fact that for troubleshooting, if you have a sticky slide or something of that nature. Remember, I just film these things. I don't get too excited about writing up a script or anything, or making sure that what I do is super polished. I save the polishing for the triggers. Okay, so this safety plunger. Now, if you look closely, this safety plunger has had the crap beat out of it, because this is one of my test slides. This sees a lot of triggers, finished and unfinished, and there are burrs and that sort of thing. This one is beat the crap out of. This slide's had the crap beat out of it. Just multiple triggers and tests and that sort of thing. So if you have a slide, and let's say you've just installed a new trigger, or you've just installed a new slide, you're having some sticky issues, this is another area to look at for wear marks, because that new trigger, that new bar, can ride in this area. And if you've got fresh Cerakote, or you've got a slide that fits tighter to the frame, you may have some more interference in this area. So just to see if that's where you're having some issue, look in this area. Look at the Cerakote. Look at the finish on the slide. If you've got some wear marks in here, some scratch marks, that could be an area where you may need to let it wear in, or perhaps on the trigger bar itself, you may need to do a little bit of touching, just a little bit of this area with a file, perhaps a Dremel. I don't recommend a Dremel. Be careful. And then you need to polish it up. But this is an area that can drag on your slide. So maybe if you're not going fully into battery, this is an area you can look at. And what you can do to look at this area while everything is together, and let's say you can't quite see with your half plate, your Glock half plate, also available on the website, which I definitely recommend if you're doing any sort of work in the trigger or in all of it, a Glock armorer's plate, preferably a Tactical Pontoon Glock armorer's plate, is something you need to look at getting. But you can also pull your frame while this is all together and look up the magwell while you're cycling and playing with the trigger and see if it's scratching. You can see the interface. You can see if the striker plunger is being pushed back. You can cycle and you can take a look at this area. That's one way to do some troubleshooting and look in that area, is look up your magwell while everything is assembled. Okay? Now, if you've got some rough activation in this area, something you can look at doing is putting a reduced power striker safety plunger in this area. That might be all you need. And again, letting things wear in, it's not a bad thing. But for troubleshooting purposes, look in this area, see if your trigger safety is scratching or harshly contacting this area. With some of your aftermarket triggers that have reduced take-up, they stick up a little bit differently because that take-up is changing the way that bar sits in the frame, and it could actually have a little bit more chances of getting stuck when you're reassembling everything or cycling things than just a factory trigger would, which has more pre-travel, which allows that vertical extension to sit lower when everything's not activated. Okay, so these are two areas, and this is pretty much what I'm going to cover in this video, are two things for troubleshooting that maybe you didn't think of when you installed new parts. Fresh Cerakote can cause issues, a tighter slide, a newly machined slide, a new trigger with an out-of-tune connector. The other thing is some of these connectors, some of these aftermarket connectors have a longer tab right here, which rides on this cam. And because that little connector that little tab is longer, can cause extra issues with this cycling. For tuning purposes, and this is just me telling you, sometimes taking a little bit off this to make sure that you have proper spring and push and activation of your safety bar, you may actually need to remove just a little bit off of that tab. Too much and it's not going to activate. If you take too much off, it's not going to activate like it should. You're going to run into an issue. But for tuning purposes and you're just trying to get everything locked into place, that is something that you could look at. Don't let that be the first place that you start removing material. Look at tuning that thing before grinding and removing material. But for the purpose of this video, so I don't ramble on too long, these are two areas just to look at. Look for wear in this area. Look for wear in this area. Now you know what that cam does. Now you know why that bump is there. I hope I've taught you something. And before we go, Tactical Pontoon. If you're looking for a trigger, if you are looking for not only an amazing trigger, but the best stickers in the business, as well as the best customer service and the best training, Tactical Pontoon is it. TacticalPontoon.com. I would love to build you a worthy trigger system, whether it's a drop-in from the Peacemaker line or it's an adjustable Heisenberg. There's your trigger breaking clean. Heisenberg. We got some really cool stuff coming with the Heisenberg line. And, of course, the top of the line, Leonidas systems. Okay? I can get you set up. But for now, I hope you learned something. I hope I've taught you something. Until next time. We will catch you later on Tactical Pontoon.